So the first episode of the Halo TV show on Paramount Plus has been released and has taken a look at an interesting aspect of the Halo universe. Instead of focusing entirely on the war between the UNSC and the Covenant, it opens touching on the war between the UNSC and the Insurrectionists. So I figured today we could just give a little bit of a refresher for those who maybe didn't know quite as much about this conflict, exactly who the Insurrectionists are, and a little bit about their war with the UNSC. I'm Colin, and this is Sci-Fi Deep Dive. Remember, if you enjoyed this video, to head down below and hit that subscribe button. So, the Insurrectionists. Obviously a rebel movement within the UNSC, but what exactly were they standing for? What did they want? And what were their goals? And what did their war with the UNSC actually look like? Well, today let's look at all of this and try to piece together exactly what this faction is, since they haven't gotten quite the screen time that the UNSC, the Covenant, or even the Banished have gotten in recent years. So let's start with exactly what the insurrectionist movement is. Well, as their name suggests, they're insurrectionists, or rebels. They're leading a rebellion against the UNSC, and their conflict with the UNSC stretches back to long before the beginning of the Human Covenant War. In fact, a lot of the UNSC forces that were deployed at the beginning of the Human Covenant War were actually assembled to fight insurrectionist forces in that ongoing conflict. So, let's start with what the insurrectionist faction wants. What are they after? So what exactly does this rebel movement want? Well, what they want is independence. It's the standard sort of science fiction rebellion independence ploy. These colonies on the fringes of human space feel like the core worlds, if you will, are sort of abusing the resources provided by these outer rim territories, for lack of a better term, and they want independence so that they can have control over where their resources are going. And unsurprisingly, the human government is not very pleased with this movement and thus has dispatched their military to deal with them. As for how legitimate and professional their faction is, it varies quite a bit. Some depictions show the insurrectionists as a ragtag group of civilian rebels dressed in sort of plainclothes, streetwear, carrying assault rifles, and wearing body armor, and others depict them as very professional military forces, likely planetary militias of planetary governments that may even back this insurrection movement. And we know that it's actually a fairly organized clause. They have straight-up leaders and figureheads, and in some cases they even seem to have a head of state. And the insurrection was no small problem for the UNSC before the arrival of the Covenant. They were a very serious pain in the UNSC's side, taking up a lot of military resources to sort of maintain this campaign. And the insurrectionists, when it comes to even space combat, weren't a laughing matter. They had on several occasions either sabotaged or occasionally stolen UNSC warships to use against the UNSC themselves. A lot of the weapon systems we see used by the UNSC during the Human Covenant War were deployed originally against insurrectionists, and that includes the Spartans. Well, the Spartans did prove remarkably effective at engaging the Covenant, in fact, one of the very few tools that were effective against the Covenant. They were actually originally designed to be this overpowering force that could put down these insurrections. But I'm sure you're wondering, with the arrival of the Covenant, this conflict must have stopped. I mean, we see these planets being turned to glass, humans being absolutely wiped out, indiscriminate killings of civilians, men, women, children. Obviously, this conflict between different human factions must have ended in the face of a common enemy. Well, not quite. A lot of the insurrectionists believed, as the show depicts, that the Covenant was a UNSC propaganda tactic, a way to get them to come to the table, basically painting a larger, more prominent threat to get the insurrectionists to let their guard down so the UNSC could finish them off once and for all. A lot of them didn't trust the reports of the Covenant until the Covenant were landing on their worlds, and by then it was too late. But this was really the case across human space throughout the duration of the Human Covenant War. It wasn't as unified as some of the games lead us to believe. There was still fighting going on between the UNSC and the insurrectionists, even while the Covenant were creeping ever closer to Earth. And as evidence of this insurrectionist activity lasting that far into the Human Covenant War, at the opening of Halo Reach, we actually see direct references to insurrectionist attacks within the past few weeks that had major ramifications on the war effort. I mean, these are attacks on things like shipyards that would have been crucial for humanity's struggle against the Covenant being attacked by this insurrectionist faction. And we see during one of the missions that a lot of civilians have a lot of contraband, weapons that had been stolen from UNSC forces, for example, that were likely stolen to serve insurrectionist causes. So the insurrectionists didn't really play nice with the UNSC, even during their war with the genocidal Covenant, which really should have changed everything. You would think first contact with a hostile alien species that is clearly very militarily capable would make human factions seriously reconsider fighting one another, but clearly it didn't with this insurrectionist faction. But first contact with the Covenant was still very dramatic and did change a lot of things, and if you'd like to learn more about humanity's first contact with the Covenant, I'll leave a link up here to my video on that. And I want you to let me know down in the comments what you think of the first episode of this new Halo TV show. Do you like it so far, or do you think it's a little over the top? How do you feel about its depiction of the factions within the Halo universe? And if you have anything else you'd like to see me cover in Halo, leave it down below in the comments. Last but not least, if you enjoyed this video, head down below, hit the like button, the subscribe button, and the bell icon so you get notified when I upload new videos. So for Sci-Fi Deep Dive, I'm Colin, and I will see you next time.